to articulate. So, number one, they know that strengthening families, we have to think about a multi generational approach, that our work is not just about kids, but we know that kids grow up in families and it's their parents or maybe their grandparents um, that need to be included in this process. And as we know, things get handed down just like your traditions for Thanksgiving or whatever get handed down. Also, the way you parent can be handed down if you don't learn or change. So, including all generations is really important. A consideration of culture is critical. We know that how people view things, their beliefs, their practices, their traditions are shaped by their culture, and all of that needs to be respected and incorporated in this work. It's a strength based perspective, knowing that when we're working with kids or families, if we find out what's going right and we try to support and get more of that, we can have some good results. And people are actually more likely to engage with us if we're focused on our strengths. Because, we can really get off into just how do you fix a problem and see people as their problems versus all the things they have going well. They've incorporated, of course, they think about the biology of stress. Um, and I'm sure some of you are seeing some of the research about what we know what stress does to the body. There's been a lot of education in Alaska now on adverse childhood experiences. We have a lot of information about not only the toll that early childhood or adverse childhood experiences have on people, not just in terms of their health, but also their mental health um, and their successful outcomes. So we're looking at how stress needs to be reduced in families and how we might support that. Resiliency theory is another piece of information that's included here, and a lot of you are probably seeing more science about that and ways to build resiliency, and we'll talk a little more about that later. There is, as I mentioned, a focus on well being, and particularly if we're looking at kids who have been in the child protection system, we're looking beyond just safety and permanency for those kids, but how can kids have the best outcomes possible? How can all kids get what they need? And then they talk also in this foundational paper about the nature of risk and protective factors. And sort of their viewpoint is there are some risk factors that you can't do anything about. So focusing on them doesn't do any good. And one of the examples I'll share is generally teenage parents are more at risk. Well, you can't change the age of the parent, but what you can do is what are the strengths of that teen parent and what can you do to build on those protective factors. So here, very simply, this is not going to be anything that resembles rocket science for you because it's all very common sense and stuff that you've probably heard or studied in other places. But what they do encourage with the protective factors is that we're very intentional in trying to support or build those. So these are the 5 protective factors. The first 4 apply to parents or adults, and those are parent resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, and concrete support in times of need. And the 5th protective factor is social and emotional competence of children. So this one is the single one that really focuses on what we're doing with kids. So to go through these one by one in a little more detail, usually when I ask folks what they think of when they think of someone who's resilient, I usually hear people say it's that person that can bounce back. And that is certainly a piece of resilience. But with strengthening families, we take it sort of one step forward, and the resiliency research does this also. It's not just being able to get through something and bounce back. It's learning from your experience and coming out a little stronger. And that's what resilience really is about. It's the person who feels confident, trusts their ability to solve problems, can reach out for support, to others when they need help, um, and folks who just know that they can get through situations, wind up on the other side, and do okay. And I think that for all of us, we hit those times in our lives where we go, "Oh, this is going to be a bear. I don't want to go through this. This is going to be a hassle." But I know if I hang in there and I do what I need to do, I will get through this. So we can see the other side of the problem. For some people who don't have resilience or feel comfortable or confident or trust their ability to solve problems, they can become overwhelmed and just completely, shut down and not see that they're going to get through this. So, supporting parental resilience is really about helping people learn to manage their stress if they don't have good tools for doing that already, and really to help build confidence. Um, and there's 100 ways to do that. And one of the examples I always use in my training is when I worked here at RollCap as the Child Development Division Director, and we had parents on our parent council for Head Start. And we had parents from around the state selected by their communities to be part of the council. And when they joined us initially, we heard lots of comments like, "Oh, I don't know why I'm here. I've never been on a committee before. What do you mean you want me to make decisions about an $11 million budget and hire 200 staff?" And um, what we try to do is just keep reinforcing you're smart. We're going to help you along the way. We'll provide the information that you need. And of course, at the end of the year, people had made all those decisions, very good decisions. The surprise for me, though, we did some interviews with those parents and we did videos with them. And when they were talking about what it meant to them to be on the council, one of the comments, which was repeated, was not only did it make me more comfortable sitting on a council or a committee, but it made me a better parent. I felt more comfortable, more confident in myself, and my kids were very proud of me. So I think of this as something we can do just by noticing when parents do things well, helping them manage stress, helping them see that they've gotten through problems and come out ahead. There's lots of little things we can do to help build parental resilience. The second protective factor, again, is something that I think is apparent to most of us. We know that families or individuals that are isolated often have a tougher time managing stress and taking care of their needs. It's kind of this idea, as they say, no man is an island, is that we really do need to be connected to other people. And um, you know, sometimes we think that's just having somebody to call when you're down or low or need something, but it's also sharing the joy in our lives and connecting in that way. Um, it can be simple. Do I have somebody that would watch my kids when I go to the grocery store? Or do I have somebody that pick me up a gallon of milk when they come back from the grocery store? Um, do I have somebody to call? And often we ask people if you needed something, who would you call? And if that person weren't home, who would you call? And if that person weren't home, who would you call? So can you identify maybe even three people in your life that you could call for a different reason? And we develop our relationships in different ways. So some people we could trust with a very important issue in our lives. Other people it's more superficial. But where do we go when we need something? And the other thing that Strengthening Families talks a lot about is how this might impact parenting, for example, that community norms are built through our social connections. So, for example, if I spend my time um, with people who really don't value children, um, kids are to be seen and not heard, and maybe spanking is the common way of parenting, then it would not be unusual for me to think that's the community norm that I should also do. So that can impact how we parent. And also, it's the idea that just not any relationships um, or maybe what we need. We know that some of us have relationships that don't help us make great decisions or lead us down the wrong path. And so, how can we make social connections that are healthy for us? And a lot of the programs that are embedding this approach in their work do things like family nights or family get togethers or community cafes. And it's really about how do you help parents connect with each other as well as connecting with programs because we know programs aren't the solution to everything. The third protective factor, again, I think is pretty obvious. It's knowledge of parenting and child development. Um, we know that if you understand how a 2 year old's going to behave, you're probably going to be a lot more patient than if you expect them uh, to have the capability of a 5 year old. If you know what teenagers are going to go through and what's happening with their brain development, you understand a little more about maybe not taking some of those things personally that happen, those exchanges you have with your wild 13-year-old daughter, maybe. So understanding parenting or child development is really important in terms of our responses to kids, but also this knowledge of parenting is what do I do? How do I handle this? How do I help my kids be successful and be the people that I want them to be? And, that can come from a lot of places. It might be in a village where you have an elder who's willing to share about the traditional parenting styles and what has worked traditionally for that culture. It might be we have a lot of sort of social media tech savvy parents now that there are lots of apps you can put on your phone for um, what to do. Actually, I just spoke with a friend who's expecting a child, and she has the app on what to expect when you're expecting. So she pulls it up, and it knows the exact due date for her. So she says, "Here's, the app says here's how big your baby is, and here's what they're doing right now, and here's what they're developing." And there's lots of resources like that for parents. And parents sharing information with each other is just really a valuable thing to be able to say, what do you do when your child does this? And you get some ideas from other parents is very, very powerful. And when we have kids, especially with challenging behaviors, you might have a family where things have gone really well for the first three kids, but the fourth one has really got me puzzled. So what do I do because these behaviors are different? And sometimes that obviously takes specialized help. So, what do we do in our programs and community to make parenting information available or child development? Again, that can be anything that's all the way from a bulletin board to a pamphlet to a class to parent conversations. There's lots of ways to make this available. The fourth protective factor for families is concrete supports, and we talk about this in times of need. So it might be in response to a crisis. So it might be do families know where to get food if they need it, shelter, clothing, um, and all of those things we know is a big concern for families right now as we move into winter. But how do I get health care? How do I get a job? What do I do if I'm having trouble in my marriage or I have a mental health issue? Do I know how to get connected? And sometimes that's do I know where the program or the service is? And sometimes it's a more informal kind of support. So that might be my church has a food bank, or I can go there to talk with my pastor, or it might be there's a clothes closet up at the community center. Um, do I know where to call? Do I know where to go? And you can see that these protective factors kind of overlap with each other. So, do I feel strong enough, resilient enough that I can even reach out? Am I comfortable enough to ask out or to ask for help when I need it? And again, specialized services for kids, whether that might be mental health or infant learning program or special education. Do I know how to access that and feel comfortable asking? So, the fifth and last protective factor that we focus on and try and support is social and emotional competence with children. So it's kind of we know that if kids are pretty good at identifying their feelings, and if they have a way to express that that's socially appropriate, like telling you I'm mad or I'm angry or I'm frustrated, or writing that down or dealing with it in an appropriate way, it makes it easier as a parent to do that. It's less stressful for parents than when you have kids who just kind of explode or come in and kick the dog or hold everything in and withdraw. So, when they first started strengthening families, it was very focused on early care and learning programs. So, preschool programs or childcare. And the reason they did that is because they said if we're going to get started and we want to do something systematic and we want to provide something for all families, um, and we understand the importance of early brain development. So that was pretty rich in the science at that time. They said, let's go to child care programs because earlier the better, support all families, universal approach. So they took nominations from around the country about child care or preschool programs that were doing a really good job with family support. And what they learned was a surprise. When they asked parents, why do you like this program? What they heard from parents was, my kids bring things home and teach me. So I was frustrated the other day and I said this or did this and or did this and my child said to me, Mom, use your words. And the parent goes, well, where'd you get that? Well, I got that in my child care program. I got that in my school. Or, Dad, I think you need to calm down, maybe sit on the step for a while and breathe. Kids were bringing these techniques home to their parents, which just astounded parents. So it could be reversed. Not only does this sort of competence really make it easier to parent, but kids can teach us too. So this stuff, if you're thinking you're in childcare or Head Start or a school program or an after school program, anything that we can do to help kids understand their own feelings, express those in a healthy way, actually strengthens their family. So I want to pause here a minute and see if there are any comments from folks. If you want to share something through chat, let me give you a minute. I guess what I'd like to hear, does this resonate? Does this sort of make sense with the work you're doing? The website, at the end of the slideshow, I have a website address that I'll be able to share. So for you on the phone, what should I assume that not everyone can see the chat? So some of the comments that are coming in is yes, I'm assuming that makes sense. Another one is I really appreciate the example about promoting protective factors because there are many risk factors that you can do nothing about. This resonates with me. And do you know of a good curriculum that can be used in schools to teach these ideas? Um, Let me just respond to that, Anna. I know in preschool and childcare, one of the things we've been working with is called the Alaska Pyramid Partnership, and it uses a curriculum from the Center for the Study. No, wait, how does this go? The Center for Social and Emotional Foundations for Learning. Um, so you can access their curriculum right on their website. Um, in schools, I'm not so sure about school age, although I do know that many school districts are really concerned with social and emotional learning. And Anchorage school district, for example, is pretty big on that. So that might be a good contact for you. Another comment here is, hi Shirley, I'm the Family Services Manager at Campfire, Alaska, and I would definitely say this resonates with much of the work we've been able to accomplish in our before and after school programs. We had an amazing opportunity to formally introduce this framework, and we've been able to slowly instill this into our day to day programming. Great examples. Yes, Campfire has been one of our star programs. They were involved with us early on, and it's just exciting to see what you folks have done with this. From Helen, Head Start seems to have a strong family support component, but seems like that is lost as the child gets into higher grades and becomes almost non-existent in Head Start or high school, maybe. Yeah, Head Start is I love Head Start because it's such a comprehensive program. And when people describe what a quality early childhood program is, they describe Head Start. And then I go, this is Head Start. And Head Start can be really intentional using this approach too. I know with Head Start we do family plans and we have lots of family gatherings, and you can build these protective factors right into a plan. Like, how are you doing with resiliency, and do you want to build on that, or how are you doing with your parenting information? So whether you're in child protection or Head Start or Campfire, you can build this into your work with families. High school. Okay, that's what I thought you meant, Helen. Thank you. Good comments. Um, and at the end of this, I can make a note too if there are some other resources I can share with you, like curriculum, because I'm betting that I have some ideas in my office that aren't coming to the top of my head now, and I can get that back out. Well, wait just a second, because Anna's typing. Oh, and there's a question like, how are you implementing this in Campfire? Cassie's going to respond to that, it looks like. If I can tell some stories on our early childhood programs, um, we had one program in particular that said, we're really not thinking about families because we're very focused on children. And we have kind of this drive-by approach where families just drop their kids off, they're out the door, pick up the kid, and they're gone. And they said, we can't do a lot because we're not doing anything. So what they decided to do was, we're just going to learn every parent's name. So what they started to do when parents came into their building to drop kids off, then they could call the parent by name, like, "Hi Sue, how are you? How'd it go last night?" And it's like with baby steps started to build relationships with their parents. So their parents would hang them out longer. They eventually came to more events. One of the kindergarten teachers that had decided to build this approach in before her school started in the fall pulled all the families together for a play date, and parents got to know each other, got to know their names, got to know hers, and it was kind of interesting to see what happened that year. Parents continued to do a once a month play date throughout the school year. They attended every parent attended their parent teacher conferences. They'd come, they'd hang out on the playground and talk to each other. They were just supportive all year long, and she was pretty amazed about the dramatic impact that that had. So Cassie says for concrete support, we offer scholarships and access to community programs free of charge. Through social connections, we offer 4 large structured family events that have a major focus on connecting families with one another and a larger theme such as social and emotional learning supports, community resources, or internal events. As well as monthly smaller family gatherings, we also have a lot of website support, Facebook connections. On site staff receive specific family engagement training. Yeah, we needed a presentation here by Campfire, huh? They're just, it would be a great maybe follow up thing to do. So while Cassie, okay, for youth, social and emotional learning, we implement SEL curricula from Conscious Discipline, YPQA, ACES training, Kelsel's Choice, bullying curricula, and just starting youth mental health first aid. Wow, that's a great selection. Marcella and Jenny are typing. Here in our Head Start, we just did a case management this morning to brainstorm about a child with challenging behaviors. Two coordinators from Anchorage, two teachers, supervisor, and family advocate. The child just started this week. And while Jenny's talking, let me share this last or this slide on sort of a summary of the approach. I think we've talked a bit about this already, that it's really about all families. So it kind of removes that stigma of, it's just for those families that are really struggling. Um, but we all need this if we're parents. It builds on family strengths, which hopefully buffers risks and provides better outcomes. And the three outcomes we really talk about with strengthening families in our logic model is it strengthens families, promotes optimum development, and it prevents maltreatment. It can be implemented through small but significant changes in everyday action. So that's the other thing about this, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't take a ton of money. You don't have to hire a whole bunch of new staff. It's not like starting a new program. It's really getting people to be intentional about these protective factors, to think about if we're going to do this, for example, if we're going to do a family event, what do we hope to accomplish? And is there something we can do to build the protective factors? Or if we're already doing a plan with families, maybe we could use this framework to build a plan that would make sense for them. So it's not about starting a whole new big thing. It's really thinking about how you adjust or tweak the work that you're doing. And these small actions, when they're intentionally thinking about how to build these protective factors, can make a big difference. Which is kind of what that fourth bullet is about. It's building on and becoming a part of existing programs and strategies. And often we'll get that question about how does it fit with this, or how does it fit with that, or is it culturally appropriate, or is it whatever. And it's, you take these protective factors and you say what works in our community, because it's pretty global in terms of what the protective factors are, but you can do that in multiple ways um, that fits for your group. And of course, it's grounded in research, practice, and implementation knowledge, which is pretty important for funders. So I want to go back to Jenny here. Is the Strengthening Families approach effective, or has it been tested in foster care settings or juvenile justice? The idea of family seems challenging in even juvenile justice or OCS scenarios. Any work in these areas? Well, I will say that we have done evaluations with some of our formal programs, and we see some pretty good statistics on families saying, yes, I feel connection, I feel stronger, I get information from my program. So we have a whole survey that parents do. So we're sort of reassured, and we've done that in particular with the child care programs. In foster care settings or juvenile justice, we haven't done any training around this with our juvenile justice partners, but we have with foster parents, and we have done that through some, I guess they're called summits. They've done some specialized training, particularly in Anchorage. But what we haven't done is gone back to the foster parents to do an evaluation about whether this makes a difference. And I think, especially for foster parents, these protective factors are really important because the work that they do is very, very stressful, and they need to make sure that their family's doing well so they can continue to do that work. Family is, how do you define that? Um, Kind of the way Strengthening Families views it is however you define family is your family. Um, we have done some initial training with the Office of Children's Services, and we keep thinking this would be perfect for them to do with their plans with families. And some states have done this. So, for example, when they do team decision making around moving kids or placing them in foster care, they will go through the protective factors at each of those team meetings. Say, how you doing with this? How you doing with this one? And is there something we can do to support that? So we've got from Helen, the Bethel area has a Healthy Families curriculum developed with instruction from elders that takes the family through the whole cycle of raising children, beginning with pregnancy. And I've heard really wonderful things about the Healthy Families program and the great things that are happening as a result of that. Um, and I can't claim to know everything there is about healthy families because I haven't been through that training. But I do. We recently had a meeting in Bethel, for example, and the feedback we got is this approach just simply supports what Healthy Families is already doing. Um, that it's just another way of putting some more intentionality behind what you do. But whatever Healthy Families recommends can fit into this. Um, so we're hoping that that is the case. We have Thomas typing here. So while he's typing, I'm going to move ahead because we're time is going right around. Um, so I just put up this collective impact approach. I'm sure some of you are hearing this language. It's like, the thing of the day, I guess, is how we should approach change in our communities. So when the legislature appropriated this last round of funding for us, they said we would like you to move to northern and western Alaska um, with this approach and see if you can engage folks out there. And at the same time, the Early Childhood Comprehensive Systems project, which I used to work with at the state, was asked to use the collective impact approach in terms of strengthening relationships and reducing trauma. And a collective impact approach is simply you pull your partners together in your community or um, however you want to describe your geographic area. You come up with a shared vision, like what are we trying to achieve, like strong families or reduction of maltreatment or reduction of homelessness, whatever your vision is. Folks come together, they agree on how they're going to measure success. Everybody still goes back to their program and does their work, but they're all contributing to this larger vision and continuous communication. Of course, in a backbone support if somebody gets up in the morning and thinks about this every day. So, what we have tried to do in Western and Northern is think a little along these lines of collective impact. So, last year we did training in Nome and we recruited, we had 5 villages who joined us in Nome with agencies in Nome for a 2-day training on strengthening families. They brought teams in from their communities so they'd have support when they go home. And 3 of those communities received mini grants to implement this out of the Nome area. We pulled those communities back in this year, so we've already had our Strengthening Families gathering this year, and we have 3 communities again that are going to implement Strengthening Families and now have a little bit of history under their belt. We are going to be doing a training in Bethel. It looks like it's going to be February, if we can find a clear week where people aren't already engaged. Um, and that, again, will be a 2-day training, and people can take a look at the approach and see if it fits with the work that they're doing, and then there will be mini grants available again for that. So I wanted to share with you these new posters that we have. Oop, went too far. We're missing a poster. Maybe it will show up here. Um, we had some national posters for strengthening families, and they just didn't seem very Alaskan. So the folks out of the Nome region, we had 4 communities who helped us develop these. So they took the protective factor and they say, here's how I would describe it, here's what this means, here's what it says, and then they helped us pick out pictures. So now we have like 500 copies of each of these posters, and if you're interested in having sets of those, you can contact me later and we'll send some out. So there is one for each protective factor, and why only 3 of those are showing up, I don't know. But they're really beautiful. They're gorgeous posters. And we do have some other materials that go with that. Here are some contact uh, sites for you. The Center for the Study of Social Policy. You can get in on their site, and you dig around a little bit because there's a lot of stuff on their site to get. They have all kinds of resources. They have training curriculums. They have handouts for a variety of whether it's health professionals or child protection or early childhood. They'll tell you what other states are doing, so that's pretty good. And then I am working with Tammy Sandoval at the Child Welfare Academy um, to work on this project, particularly in our rural sites. So if you're interested in posters, if you're interested in training, want more information, you could contact either myself or Tammy, and we'd be happy to get back with you. Okay, let me check the chat just a second. Cassie and Helen, would you mind sharing your contact information? Certainly, Cassie has put that up. Got a place to get posters. Okay, I think we're caught up. So what I want to tell you just really quickly, Kirsty Ione, we always say she's like one of our rock stars because this gal just got after strengthening families in her community. So Golovin sent a team into training, a year and a half ago, and Kirsty's kind of been leading that charge. And they've expanded their leadership team. And actually, there's one more person who's joined their leadership team who isn't up there. Amanda Moses, um, most recently, came in for training and joined the leadership team. But Golovin, what they decided to do, now this is a visit by myself and Tammy Sandoval out in Golovin. We went out to visit. So last year, what they decided to do is to start with a community cafe, and they asked these 3 questions of their community group. What can our community do to help strengthen our families? What do strong families look like? And what do you do to keep your family strong? And so they used the information they gathered there to plan a series of events throughout the year. Um, they do on every Saturday. They have an event. The whole community is invited to come. There's all kinds of activities. They all do community cafe questions. Part of what they did with their mini grant was bought supplies for those community events and food. They also had decided as a community they used to have a place where the families could picnic together. So they're working on an area to do that. Um, this is out of Kirsty's office, and you can see she's well supplied for the year here. There's their community center. That's where they host their strengthening family events. The second community cafe, you can see here's a list of great questions for people to talk about. So they're not about necessarily training people as much as getting people to talk to each other. How have your experiences growing up affected your parenting? What drains your energy and builds it back up? What gets in the way of you asking or getting the help that you need for you and your family? What kinds of relationships make you stronger? How do you assist your child in dealing with their negative feelings? So, one of the things that we have shared with the people we trained is we have a whole list of community cafe questions. We have a kit that we can also send you if you're interested in that, so you don't have to create the questions. But everybody's an expert when you ask questions like this. And this is questions. The next slide is for what they want to do in the future. What they have built into their proposal for this next year is they're going to, on their Saturday events, they're really going to be very intentional in teaching about the protective factors so people can sort of take control of that themselves. It's not, I just participate in things, but I understand I can go home, start thinking about my own social network. I can start thinking about where to get my own parenting information. Um, so we are at 5 minutes. So I guess we have a couple time for comments or questions in chat.
We will open up the phone line too if anyone has a question on the phone. So if anyone on the line has a question or a comment, just state your name and you can go ahead, and everyone else, if you don't have a question or comment, if you can just press *6 so you can mute yourself and just try to cut back on background noise. Thank you.
To address a couple of these questions too, you mentioned the community cafe. Do you do teen cafes? We don't specifically do teen cafes, but I think you could take the questions in our parent cafe kit and adjust those for teens. And what Strengthening Families has done, they looked at all these protective factors and said, how does this apply to adolescents? So they have created the same sort of framework or approach, and it's called Youth Thrive. And you can find that on their website, and it really takes the same protective factors and says, how does this apply to adolescents? So you can use it with teens. The mini grant, let me tell you sort of the process for that. Mini grants are offered to the folks who attend our 2-day training. So right now those are reserved for folks in the Belleville area or in the Nome area. And if they send a team in for the 2-day training, then they're eligible to apply for a mini grant. And when I say mini, they're small. They're like $3,000 to $7,000. But it's enough to buy some supplies for parent events and to get some information out there. And Betsy says, we miss you in the Matsu. And I think what Matsu is doing is really exciting. They have a major collective impact approach going out there with lots of community partners, and they have developed a plan. And part of their plan is how do we use the Strengthening Families approach to build stronger families in the Valley. So with that, I just took any time you had to get a word in edgewise. But I'm going to turn this maybe back to Anna, and thank you very much for your time this morning.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shirley, for being here and for sharing with us today. So we have on the right-hand side of the page a few resources, including a copy of the PowerPoint. We also have a full report and summary released by the Search Institute last month called "Don't Forget the Families," and this report is focused more on the developmental relations and provides a lot of research behind what we talked about today. There's also a summary of the 5 protective factors that Shirley talked about that you can download off of here. And if you could just take a quick minute and take our feedback survey. It's only 4 questions long, but your feedback is really appreciated, just for comments on what we can do better and what we can do to improve for our next training. So as we mentioned earlier, this training is part of the Supporting Youth webinar series that the Resource Basket and Alaska After School Network are offering. So on your screen there is a live link that can take you to the Resource Basket website where you can find additional information about upcoming webinar trainings. If you haven't already, check us out on Facebook. Here you can stay connected, and we post opportunities and funding opportunities up there. And also, if you wanted to be added to the Resource Basket or Alaska After School listservs for newsletters to keep in touch and keep informed, you can email myself or Thomas Azarel at our emails listed right there. So on behalf of Resource Basket After School Network and Shirley, thank you all for being here today and hope you enjoy the rest of your Thursday.